So as you can see, I've got loads of stuff on my mat. So if you happen to be somebody who has the luxury of owning your own bolster, that's amazing. Get your bolster out. If you don't have a bolster, that's okay. We're going to make a homemade bolster today. So go grab yourself, I would maybe have 2 blankets, okay? 1 blanket to cover yourself in when we come into the poses, and the other blanket is to make a bolster. If you have a bolster, you don't need the second blanket. So if you don't have a bolster, I want you to grab, I wouldn't suggest a duvet, just because if it's down-filled, it'll just kind of go and squish. So grab like a throw or something, and then grab a pillow. I should have grabbed my memory foam pillow, but I'm not actually going to use this. But if you have pillows that aren't squishy, so this pillow is really, really squishy. If you have squishy pillows, couch pillows would probably work really well because they're a little bit more sturdy. But if you had a couple pillows like this, so essentially what you're going to do is make sure that your bolster is going to be at least kind of shoulder width. And then essentially all you're going to do is you're going to create a little sausage. So you're going to start to roll, 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 and you're going to make a homemade bolster. It will be just as good as a bolster. Boom. Okay, so there's my little sausage bolster. So whether or not you have your own bolster, this works just fine. You just need a blanket and a pillow. Okay, so if you need to make that, go make that now. This is a very slow restorative yoga practice. If you've done yoga nidra with me before, I often talk about how like an hour of yoga nidra is worth about 4 hours of deep, deep rest. This style of practice is very similar, and you might fall asleep in the poses. You might kind of go into that weird kind of half asleep, half awake state. That's totally fine. I'm actually not going to talk a lot, which is going to be challenging for me. So we're essentially going to come into the poses, and then you're essentially just going to allow yourself to kind of drift away into them. Hence why I said wear some warmer clothes and put a blanket on you. That's going to help to keep you a little bit warmer. I'm also going to be ringing a bell, so you'll just hear this noise at the end of the poses. So if you're asleep, it's a nice way to kind of bring yourself out of that sleepy state. So we're going to start in a seated position. So hopefully you've got your little sausage bolster made. Coming with that bolster, or your bolster or your real bolster. If you want to wear your blanket as a cape, go for it. And then just let your hands fall where they will. Okay, make yourself, I'm realizing I'm covering my microphone, which probably isn't ideal. Nice. And then just close your eyes. Let the chin tuck, let the belly go. And just take a couple of moments here. If this isn't comfortable, okay, if this is quite intense on the knees, just fling the feet forwards. Okay, you can have the legs be straight, or you can turn the bolster sideways. And you can sit like so. Okay, so whatever seated position is comfortable for you. And then just let the eyes close. We're just going to do a little seated meditation. We're going to keep it really simple. You're just going to focus on the length of the inhale and the exhale. And what I want you to try to do is avoid counting. Okay, if we start to count, we often will try to get the breath to meet that count. So instead of counting, just observe the length. You don't have to change it. If you notice yourself kind of elongating the breath, that's totally fine. And if the mind wanders, I want you to just tune into a physical sensation. Okay, maybe it's the ankle on the mat. Maybe it's the bum on the bolster. Maybe it's the blanket on the skin. Okay, so we're going to stay here for about 5 minutes. Okay, if you feel like you need to adjust or move, feel free to do so. This might be challenging, okay, if you've not done a lot of seated meditation, but just see how you get on. So closing the eyes, and we're just going to focus on our breath. If the mind is wandering, just guide it back to that physical sensation and then back to your breath. Keep the eyes closed for a moment and just slowly start to bring some awareness back into the space, back into your body. And I want you to softly start to flutter the eyes open. Avoid the urge to look at the screen and just notice what's in front of you. Maybe naming a few objects that you can see. And then just gently moving through the neck, dropping it one side to the other. And then if that blanket's on your shoulders, you're just going to take it off and place it to the side for a moment. You get to put it back on you in a second. So we're going to start now in a supported fish pose. So taking your bolster and placing it horizontal across the mat. Now you're going to take the tips of your shoulder blades over the bolster. Some of you may want a block under the head. So if you have a block or something that you could place the head on, that's there as well. But you might feel comfortable without it. You're then going to scooch behind the bolster and you're going to start to lie down. Now, what we want is our shoulders to come off of the bolster. So like I said, if that's too intense, you can take a block under the head. Okay, and it might feel quite tight at the start. You want the tips of the shoulders to be able to melt over the bolster and you want your arms to be able to come behind the bolster. Now, once you've kind of got that position set up, you might want to again take that really nice blanket, almost settling yourself into another little stage nap. So it's a series of kind of naps in different positions. So getting yourself comfortable. If it's too intense on the back, what you can do is roll the bolster up a little bit more. Your shoulders won't come over. You can let them hang and then maybe taking that block underneath the head. So if the spine is uncomfortable, guys, don't stay in that position. And if it's just not working for you, just come into like a little Shavasana. So settling into that position, finding a sense of ease. Some of you will feel more comfortable with your feet on the floor rather than the legs straight. So if you want to play around with that variation, go for it. It's nice to take the arms out into a T if you've got the space. Maybe taking a couple of deep breaths here. And just working on opening up the heart space. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time at a desk, maybe on a laptop, on a phone, or maybe you drive a lot, this is a really great pose, working into that thoracic chamber. So trying to find some stillness. If you want, you can stay with that meditation, just focusing on the breath, and you might eventually just drift away. So just keeping yourself nice and still. You're going to keep your bolster in essentially the exact same position, but you're going to roll over to the side. So just slowly rolling over to one side or the other. Hopefully that blanket stays put. And you might want to use your block under your head. The other arm can also use as a pillow. You're going to bend your knees slightly here, and then you're going to bring the other arm over the head. Elbow might bend. Okay, so just scoot yourself until you feel comfortable. The bolster is going to sort of hang out underneath the ribs. Your armpit is kind of tucked into the side of that bolster. And if you want to make this a little bit more intense, you might grab a hold of that elbow, or you might send that arm long. If you feel comfortable with the head dangling, go for it. I like to have the block, to support my head. And then just let your side body rest. You might even come a little bit further over, depending on how that feels. You might straighten both arms. And you also might feel comfortable with the legs straight. So just feel free to explore this. If the side of your bottom hip is feeling a little bit tender, I find bending the knees makes that a bit better, or you can scooch a pillow or a blanket underneath it. And then again, just closing your eyes here. Maybe exploring taking a couple deep breaths. You'll really feel the exposed rib cage expand. And maybe just allowing the top and the bottom portion of the spine to become heavy as you feel that exposed rib cage getting a really nice stretch, your intercostal muscles. And again, just slowly letting yourself drift away here.
See if you can keep yourself in this sleepy state, almost as if you're just rolling over in your bed. I want you to come back onto your back and just simply make your way to the other side. So just carrying yourself over, keeping the eyes closed if you can, resettling head onto the block or onto the hands, maybe adjusting your blanket, and then bringing the opposite arm over the head. Almost like moving in your sleep without even being aware of it. Knees bent or straight, whatever works for you. And again, just taking a couple of deep breaths here. Just feeling that side rib cage opening, the exposed rib cage getting that lovely stretch. And again, just keeping the eyes closed for a moment. No need to rush between the poses. We're going to come onto our belly. So what you might want to do with your blanket is just start to kind of pull it up from the front body, taking it kind of half onto the back body. And then hopefully as you start to roll onto your belly, your blanket will kind of move with you. And you're going to take the bolster quite into the abdomen. So we're coming into a supported cobra. Elbows should be able to reach the mat. Now you can just let your head hang. Again, if you have a block and you want to use the block, feel free to take it. And you might find that, you might play around with the height, and you also might play around with where the bolster is sitting. So the more that bolster is in the abdomen, the higher you're going to come. So if it's really, really low, I wouldn't go towards the hips. It's then going to feel quite uncomfortable. So I like to kind of go mid rib cage, or sort of like towards close to the ends of the ribs. If it's too low, it's going to really push into your tummy and it's not going to feel nice. So you can, if you don't have a block, kind of create a little tower with your hands. Let the shoulders become heavy. Turn the toes slightly in, ankles flop out, and just notice how this feels in your lower back. And if you need to take a little sway from side to side, go for it. If the lower back's really feeling it, try squeezing the butt cheeks. That might take some of the pressure out. If the bolster's too high, roll the bolster forwards. Take it further forwards, it's going to be less intense. And then again, just close the eyes. Settling into this really restorative back bend. Just gently start to roll your forehead from side to side, either on the hands or on the block. Massaging into the brow, seeing how far you can go from side to side. And then starting to place the hands onto the mat. As you start to push off this bolster, I want you to move very slowly, and I want you to draw the navel towards the spine. This is going to protect the lower back. You might feel a little bit funny. Take your time, walk the knees in. Maybe letting the forearms rest on the bolster just for a moment. You can take a sway from side to side. We're going to come into a restorative child's pose, one of my absolute faves with a bolster. So when your spine feels ready, when you feel ready to move, you're going to take the knees a little bit wide. You're going to turn the bolster now vertically, bringing it in towards the pelvis, and then walking yourself over that bolster. Start with either cheek on that bolster. You might bring that bolster quite far into the pelvis. I like to hug the front of my bolster. And then just let yourself settle into this. This is going to be a really nice position for your back after that long back bend. And keeping the eyes closed, just lift the head and take the opposite cheek onto the bolster, settling back down. And then again, just gently lifting the head. This time, place the front of the forehead onto the bolster. Start to walk your hands back towards your knees and just gently start to bring yourself up, maybe pausing halfway, letting that head hang heavy. Eventually bringing yourself into like a tabletop position, just so you can bring the blanket off of you, taking it to the side. So from here, you're going to move the bolster back to horizontal, and you're going to tip onto your bum. And then we're going to take our feet over the bolster and then come to lie down. So bringing your back onto the floor. And then you're going to take your blanket again and you're going to place this over the front of you. I wouldn't place it on your legs. I'd place it kind of like onto your torso to keep you warm. And then you're going to walk the bolster back. You're going to lift the hips and you're going to start to roll the bolster under your hips, okay? Nice and squishy. And then from here, we're going to come into that really nice restorative inversion. So legs are going to come up to the sky. Good thing we've got our socks on. If you want to, you can tuck your arms underneath the blanket and get yourself really cozy. I would let your legs lightly separate, okay? So instead of squeezing them together, let them lightly separate. Let your knees bend and maybe take your hands onto your belly underneath your blanket. Let the back of the head come onto your mat and let your hips be as heavy as they possibly can. I prefer this variation, sometimes this inversion with a block under your bum. If the block is a cork block or something quite hard, it can kind of dig into your skin. A really nice thing about using a bolster is that your hips kind of become one with the bolster. We lose the edges and it feels more like we're floating in space. So just allow yourself to kind of disappear here. Slowly just start to let your right leg really, really slowly, like it's moving through molasses, keeping it straight as you can. Just start to drop down towards the mat. And the slower you go, the more kind of interest and texture this creates with the movement. Maybe feeling like the floor is worlds away. And when that leg comes down, taking the left to do the same thing. Again, just exploring how slowly you can bring that leg down. Now, as the leg comes down, no rush at all here. If this feels uncomfortable on the lower back, you're going to bend the knees. If it's okay on the lower back, you're going to keep the legs straight. And then depending on how warm you feel, you might surface the arms from out of the blanket and bring the arms over the head. But if you feel really super cozy and you want to stay in that cocoon, then keep the arms under the blanket.
So if you can, arms and legs straight. If it's too much, just simply bend the knees and place the feet onto the floor. Let the legs externally rotate. By this, I mean the toes flop out to the sides, the inner thighs move away from each other. Let the backs of the shoulders become heavy. And just laying supported. If the arms are over the head, slowly start to bring them back down by the sides. If the legs are straight, just begin to bend them. So we're going to move into Shavasana. So what I want you to do is place the feet onto the floor, press into the feet, lift the bum, and with the hands, you're going to push the bolster forwards until your bum can come onto the mat. And then take the feet onto the bolster, roll the bolster forwards until you can neatly tuck the bolster underneath the knees. And then before you go into that Shavasana, you might just settle the blanket, pulling it up, pulling it down. Arms by the sides, palms face up. And if it feels okay, slightly tuck the shoulder blades underneath you. Let the backs of the hands become heavy. And I'm just going to guide you through a little visualization and just allow yourself to drop away here. Start to visualize a bright white light. And this white light is warm, soothing, and comforting. And you watch this bright white light divide into two. And this bright white light starts to come down towards earth until it eventually settles onto the top of your right foot and onto the top of your left foot. And as the light settles here, just feel the warmth of that light resonating through the whole top of the foot, allowing the big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, and pinky toe to relax. Feel the warmth of the light starting to penetrate the soles of the feet. And then feel that white light moving up across the top of the foot and settling onto the front of the ankle. And as the light settles here, feel the warmth start to make its way deep into the ankle, all the way into the heel of the foot. And just feeling the whole foot now soft, relaxed, and released. You start to watch this light crawl up the front of the shin, warming deep into the muscles of the calves until it hovers and settles above the knee.
sending warmth into the kneecap. Feel any tightness starting to unfurl, unwind. You watch the light then make its way up the right and the left thigh. Feeling the warmth of the light penetrating deep into the muscles, all the way into the backs of the hamstrings. You feel your leg melting deeper onto the bolster. And the white light settles into the right and the left hip. And you feel this warmth into the entire bowl of the pelvis as it relaxes and releases the left and the right glute. And you watch the light begin to get bigger and bigger until both of the lights on the left and the right hip meet and become one. One big ball of light settling at the front of the pubic bone. And this light begins to settle and move deep into the abdomen. And as it settles here, you feel that warmth going into the digestive system, releasing any stress or anxiety or worry that might be housed here. You then watch the light weave its way in between each and every one of the ribs. And as it does, you feel the entire chest cavity warming, the lungs, the heart. And then the light settles at the front of the breastbone. And you watch it then break into two and move into the left and the right shoulder. Hovering here, the warmth settling deep into the shoulder joints. And you watch the light now move across the front of the bicep until it weights into the nook of the elbow. The whole upper arm is heavy and released. The light, warm, tracing its way across the forearm until it settles into the palm of the hand. You feel the light radiating into the thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, and pinky finger. The arms soft, heavy, released. The light, warm, tracing its way back up the arms, dancing across the collarbones until it becomes one light again, settling into the front of the throat. This warmth resonates deep into the throat, making its way up the neck until it finds its way into the jaw, warming into each and every tooth, allowing any tension that resides here to just soften and let go. The light warms into the cheeks, into the nose, into the eyes, until it hovers at the center of the brow, bright, white, warm. And you feel the entire face soften. And you watch the light become smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just a pin dot of light. And then it disappears deep into the skull, taking with it the heaviness of the head, the entire body warm, heavy, released into the mat. Keep the eyes closed, but just start to bring a little bit of movement into your fingers and toes. Really, really slowly. Again, just feeling into the textures of the body, of the space. Feeling into the textures as well of your practice. And just taking whatever movements now are calling to you. You might stay in your Shavasana as long as you like. You might roll over onto one side. And you might eventually bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, moving at your own pace. Again, really nice and slowly so that you can embody every bit of texture, every bit of space, every bit of movement. No matter where you are right now, just take a moment to be grateful for slowing down, for tapping into that restorative practice, and for feeding into that parasympathetic nervous system. And hopefully you carry this through the rest of your Monday and the rest of your week ahead. Again, just slowly starting to flutter the eyes open, avoiding the urge to look at the screen. Just taking note of what you see in front of you, maybe gently moving the eyes from side to side. And slowly bringing the hands together. Bringing the thumb to the space between the brow for kindness in your thoughts. To the lips for kindness in your words. And then resting the thumbs at heart center for you to carry kindness, compassion, and action through the rest of your day. Well done, guys. Namaste. Well done, everybody. So you might be super sleepy, maybe a bit of caffeine, or maybe you just crawl back into bed. You might think it's a bit of an interesting or weird way to start the week in such a slow manner, but it will really feed into kind of keeping you calm the rest of the week. If